Hello and welcome to my video. So in this video I'll be doing a paper mache pumpkin. So basically I'm going to make a helmet, a pumpkin helmet that I'm going to wear while trick-or-treating. I had this idea a week before Halloween, and so I was pretty ambitious in taking upon this project, but I decided, screw it, who cares, and I wanted to make another costume. And I say another costume because last year I actually made a Cookie Monster costume. I'll link that video in the description below or the card above. And so what I did was I just went to my recycling bin and I just went for it and found a bunch of like trash and recycling that I might be able to use to make some armature, like an armature for my paper mache. So what I did first was I found a magazine and I crumpled up these papers of magazine, or the paper inside the magazine, and I put them inside of a plastic bag. And I stuffed that plastic bag pretty big, pretty full, and then I taped the top of it with blue painter's tape, and just some tape I found lying around. Then I made a circle with the plastic bag, or tried to shape a circle, like a helmet as big as my head that I wanted it, you know, as big as my head. And then it wasn't quite big enough, so I found a bigger bag, stuffed it with more paper. I just kept doing this and kept doing it until I got the desired shape and armature I wanted. If you don't know what an armature is, it's basically what's under it's like the structure or the support of like you could use an armature for clay, like when you're making clay figures. You can use it for paper mache. You can, like I'm using it for paper mache here. So it's kind of just like to help your final product have a skeleton to it. It's kind of like the base of a structure. And so what I did next was I added some string, as you saw. I added some string to make it look like a pumpkin and some shape to it, added some like ridges, and then I just went for it. And the reason I'm doing a time lapse, I'm actually at my school, and I use something called wheat paste. And it's like this paste or this powder. It's kind of like a flour powder that you mix with water, and I started the paper mache at my school, and then I brought the paper mache project home, and I was really on a crunch for time, so that's why I brought it to school and back, and I just wanted to get as much time as I could working on it. So I brought it back home, and I had to do around 3 coats of paper mache. Obviously it wasn't completely like some areas I had to paper mache a little bit more because I felt like the neck around where I cut the hole wouldn't be very structured, or wouldn't be very hard for paper mache. I need to reinforce it a little bit more, a little bit extra, so I added like a little bit more than 3 coats. And I tried to blow dry, which it takes a while for normally paper mache to dry. It takes a really long time. So I tried to blow dry, and I am pretty impatient when it comes to our projects like this. I just want to get them done really fast, and I'll admit to that. So I did end up just doing another coat over a paper mache coat that was still wet. But then the next coat I ended up waiting until the day after, and I did another coat of paper mache. So if you wanted to do this yourself, I would recommend just try to look for all like abstract items, like boxes, cardboard boxes, and you try to look for anything that you might be able to use as like an armature or something you can use for the base of the pumpkin. And if you wanted to do it, I also heard that balloons might work for this really well too. Party City, when I worked on my Cookie Monster costume like last year, I used a ginormous balloon that they blew up very big, and then you could, if you want to make a pumpkin or a pumpkin head like I did here, you could do you can grab some string and tie that around the balloon, careful not to pop it, and then you do paper mache over the balloon. If that's another idea that I thought about, but I did end up going with the plastic bags as an armature because I felt like that was more of the shape I wanted, I guess. So that, as you saw there, I cut a hole in the bottom of my paper mache, and I cut out all of the armature or the magazines and plastic bag that I had put in before. So I cut out the skeleton of the inside of the paper mache, and I cut my head hole. So I measured for my Cookie Monster costume last year, and my head's pretty darn big, so and so I had to cut a big hole on the bottom. I put some painter's tape around the edge, just so then the sharp parts of like my cut, because I used an X-Acto blade and my blade wasn't very sharp, so it was a little bit dull of a blade, so it made like sharper edges, or not a very smooth edge against the paper mache where my head goes in. So I wanted to make sure it was a big enough hole for my head, and it wasn't scratching my forehead. And it was pretty tight. It was a little tight fit, if I'm being honest, but it's fine. It went well in the end. So what I did here was I used an X-Acto blade again. I just went back in and I cut out the eyes and I cut out the mouth of the pumpkin head. And this mouth and eyes, you saw me sketching in the beginning. I went with a lot of different ideas. The one was to try to make it like scary looking, or like I guess scary, yeah, just like horror vibes. But I've decided I wanted to go a little bit more cartoon than just horror, or just trying to make it scary. Even though, I mean, you could say this is a little creepy, which I would agree with. I guess it could be taken a little creepy, but it's not as creepy as some other faces of pumpkins that I could have done. And so I went with a more like cartoony, loose kind of mouth, because the mouth was just a little bit wavy. I felt like that was just a funny cartoon pumpkin face I was thinking of. So what I did here was pretty aggravating, if I'm being honest. I kind of ran out of acrylic paint, and my acrylic paint was very see-through and transparent, so when I laid it down on the paper mache. So what I did was I had to go back in with multiple coats, and then I ran out of paint, so I had to go to Ocean State and buy more, and it kind of sucks. I don't know. I spent more money than I wanted to on this project. I wanted to make it at least like $10 or under, or something like that, so I can get the project done fast and really cheap. But I ended up spending around like $20 on more paint, but it was fine. I mean, if you're doing this project at home and you don't and you already have acrylics, then this project's probably going to be nothing, honestly, because if you just use trash, you use newspaper, you can use some Elmer's glue instead of wheat paste. I just got wheat paste because that was what I had on hand at school. And my teacher gave me that for free, so that's pretty nice. I took advantage of my my materials, or my supplies, I mean. So yeah, if you're doing this at home, it'll be really cheap for you, and it was pretty cheap for me, relatively. Like for a costume like this, it was pretty cheap. And then I added some more red to my orange that I bought, and it made a nice shadow color for the pumpkin. And then I went back in with some more yellow, and I put some yellow and I mixed it with some orange, and I made like some highlights on the edges of the pumpkin to make it look like more shadows and more shading. And acrylic paint does tend to dry a little darker than when you first initially put the paint on, and so that kind of sucked. That it did dry a little bit darker than I wanted, because it looked really bright, like a bright yellow when I was laying it on, and then now it looks a little bit darker just because, I mean, it kind of dried and blended together, I guess, a little bit more. But yeah, that's fine. I think I was satisfied with the color that came out, and I did actually outline the eyes and the mouth with bright yellow acrylic. And then this is where I put the Velcro strips, or the Velcro dots, I mean, on the inside of the pumpkin. And I just bought these Velcro dots at literally the dollar store. I wanted to go cheap. I wanted to stay cheap. I bought some Velcro dots from the dollar store, and they worked great, actually. And I put some Velcro on some black fabric. You can use like an old t-shirt, or like some fabric that you might be able to see through. I mean, you couldn't really see through it very well, the black fabric on the costume, but it did work for what I was doing. Like if it was bright out, or like just sunset, you could still see everything. Pretty much fine through the costume. And I added some newspaper to the back of it, so it had some head support inside the pumpkin, so it wasn't just flopping around my head. And this was the end result. So I wore a red bow tie with a suit and some black pants. I'm really satisfied with the end result, and it only took me like a week to make, so if you want to try this yourself, just go ahead. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It took me a while to make, and I hope you like the project, so if you do, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.